people feel stupid, and people don't want to feel stupid when they read the news.
My guest today decides what millions of Norwegians read every single day. He's the homepage editor at VG, by far the biggest news site in Norway. His name is Helge, and today we go from front page stunts to losing control to algorithms to the hardest question in journalism right now. What the heck were you thinking in maybe one of the darkest months in the world to desk Ice Ice Baby?
Well, the very short answer is I thought it was funny.
Is there any sort of learning that you made in terms of like what sort of headline or image works better?
They had gathered tens of thousands of A/B tests from different newspapers to find a sort of golden rule for what works, and the results were there is no golden rule. I now no longer control all of the stories on the front. I only control the 20 top ones.
Yeah.
Currently 20 articles to me obviously feels very little now. I would be very surprised and very sad if the front page doesn't still have a very important role in 10 years. Fact-checking takes time. If Donald Trump says something, you can't fact-check in real time. It's very hard.
VG is one of the biggest news sites in all of Norway. And I remember back to February, which was a little bit of a dark month in the history. We had Epstein files, we had problems with the prince in Norway going to jail. And in the midst of this, and for the listeners who's listening on this on audio, right now on the video, you will see a front page with Ice Ice Baby. Helge, what the heck were you thinking in maybe one of the darkest months in the world to desk Ice Ice Baby?
I thought it was funny. The slightly longer answer is in VG it is encouraged from our bosses to think differently and creatively and to sort of experiment with form and humor and certain other creative aspects. This mostly comes out in articles or video, but I think, and so does my boss, that it should also be on the front page. So I like to be on the lookout for things like this. This is obviously a bit of a extreme example. You shouldn't do this every week, I think, but I just saw that I could do it, and I thought it was very funny.
The part where you also are able to show a little bit of identity, but I also think that this is maybe not something you do all the time. But what are sort of the indication that you figure out that now is a good time to do it?
It's just sort of scanning the front page, seeing what do we have? Is there anything that we can do something funny with? Because lots of the time it simply isn't. Like the news is the news, and sometimes they are very serious and there's not much to joke about. But if you have the time and you can take a little extra look to see is there anything we can do here. Again, I don't do this every day. I don't do it every week even, but sometimes the opportunity just arises and you can do it. And I often try these things and they're not so good. And the good thing is the front page is a constant work in progress. So if you try something and you can have it there for like 2 minutes, so then you look at it again and you see, no, it's not really much good. Is that you can just remove it? It's fine.
For everybody of the listeners or somebody clicking play on this podcast that doesn't know what a homepage editor is or does, how would you describe the role?
My role is that I have this quite simple but quite hard job to just make the front page. I decide where everything goes, what's the top story, what's the second top story, and I sort of have the responsibility for every published article in VG, basically. Obviously there's people above me but who make decisions, but I am the sort of curator of every published article at all times.
And what is the number currently on the homepage? How many article videos is populated there right now?
I think the number varies slightly, but between 70 and 80.
Yeah, that's a lot to handle for the people desking it. My question is here, do you, at VG being the largest news site in Norway, I mean, do you have some rules in terms of what should go there? Because it's very interesting. You cover many things for the majority of Norwegians, celebrities, crime, sports. Do you have some rules in terms of the distribution? What should be on top? What is your thinking there?
The ambition is that everyone should find something they would like to read at all times quite high on the front page.
Mm.
That is not always easy to do, because sometimes the news are just demands that the front page is quite heavy. If there's a war, murder, other quite serious stuff, then it's hard. But we try as best as we can to find the mix is sort of the word we use in VG, that the mix should always be as good as possible. And that is mixing light news and hard news, politics, foreign affairs, sport, celebrity, to be as inviting to as many people as possible.
Do you have some priorities on sort of some content that goes higher up than the other? Is that the part which is what is important for me to be updated as a citizen in Norway, or what are sort of rules of sort of what get priority on the top?
Well, that is there are many aspects to this. Like sometimes just news value. If Støre resigns, that is the top story. that is just what it is. And sometimes we can sort of mix in the lighter news, which doesn't necessarily have that high news value possibly, but it could be interesting, could be a lot, could be football, could be celebrity news, something that people find interesting, even though it's not the most important thing in the world. Right now we have the World Cup, so football is quite important. But,
yeah, and it covers a lot on the homepage at the moment.
Yes, it does. We are recording the day after Norway beat Iraq, so yeah.
It's a very good time to be playing this in, and for also one of the roles as editor of the homepage front pages, you run quite a lot of A/B tests, and I think this is an area that's quite interesting because in Kilkaya we sort of do analysis on A/B tests of what works, what doesn't. You run multiple variations on the page today. Is there any sort of learning that you made in terms of like what sort of headline or image works better in this case?
Well, my colleague Tom shared quite an interesting article with me a few years ago from the New York Times, where they had gathered tens of thousands of A/B tests from different newspapers to find a sort of golden rule for what works. And the results were, there is no golden rule. Every case is different. Every news story is different. Every day is different. So something that might not work for one story might work for another. It depends entirely on how is the day looking in terms of other news, what is the picture, what is the title. But of course there are certain rules. Often you can gain traffic by removing information, and then you have to look out for quick exits. So in the tabloid form, we like short snappy titles is sort of the name of the game, but that also often involves taking away a lot of information. Obviously, you use fewer words. So then you have to find a balance between how short can this be and still be something that the reader can even understand. And you need combination with pictures. You don't need to explain who people are if you have a good picture of them, for example. If you have a really good picture from a dramatic news event that speaks very loudly, you don't need to explain, for example, if there's been quite a hefty collision and you have a really sort of heavy picture of this, then you don't need to explain there's been a collision. Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the combination of the image and the text is important. One clear example I've seen, and I've seen this over and over again across our clients, but then there is these economy articles where you, for example, have an image of what is a billionaire, and you have the headline, "Billionaire loses everything," and then the B version is the name of the billionaire and loses everything. Very often the billionaire does better than the name itself in sometimes, but then if you have a picture of the guy behind me here, Jonas Gahr Støre, which is the Prime Minister of Norway, you most likely will know who it is.
Yes, if you have Støre, you don't need to use either title or name. People know who he is.
VG and Schibsted are huge on developing AI tools and so on, and I see this across different CMSs now with AI headline testing. I mean, it can work okay on sort of the article level, but do you think that what are the limitations of putting an AI to do what the title should be on the homepage for you?
I think the AI, at least in my experience, understands the tabloid form, understands what you sort of the main baseline of what you're looking for. But again, as we spoke just now about Støre, if you have a picture of Støre, you don't need to explain who he is. and the AI doesn't quite understand when do you need context and when do you not. So if I gave this an article about Støre and told it to make a title for me, it probably would say Prime Minister Støre does X, and like you don't need that. You just need a picture of him.
Is that just an intuitive instinct that you sit on, that you will know immediately, but depending on the person's, what you should be putting out there?
I mean, I've been doing this for quite some time, so you build up a certain sort of, what do you call it, the gallery of people.
Yeah, muscle memory almost.
Yeah, but like there's a certain people we write about a lot, and our readers know who they are, so we do not need to give context for who Putin is, or Zelensky, or Støre, or Taylor Swift, or Erling Haaland.
Yeah, I would almost connect it to, I love to play poker, and I play so many hands now that I know depending on which cards gets there and what I have on, I most likely have played it before, so I will have some muscle memory in terms of what my next bet should be almost.
Yeah.
If I were just to do a stupid analogy on it.
It's not that stupid at all.
Yeah, so it's something about the instinct in this. And one thing that I just have to ask you, because I sit daily with newspapers globally, and very often I show them Norwegian homepages, and you say that the text should be maybe short, snappy, and one of the things I see is sort of like, I would almost call it chaotic in terms of like the design, bigger text where maybe I'm New York Times or the others where it's shorter. You maybe also have a headline, not just 2 or 3 words. What is it about this way in Norway being so specific on how it looks versus, I would almost say, the rest of the world?
Well, I would argue that it's not very chaotic at all, because I think it's quite clean. I think that if you visit the New York Times or the Daily Mail or certain other newspapers, to me the front page is kind of, it's very cluttered because there's so much text. There's like a big headline and sub-headline and then maybe some paragraphs underneath it. So it's, you sort of can't, to the same extent as I feel that we can do in VG, you can't sort of make this is the most important thing in the world right now. The sort of statement on the front page, which I think the tabloid form really lends itself to. You can sort of be very clear and have a lot of, we call it trøkk in Norwegian. It sort of strikes the reader very, sort of, oh, yes, quite abrasive. This is, so I think that this type of storytelling is quite clean, honestly. I know that like it's very different, but I don't think it's necessarily very chaotic. At least I don't feel like that way. But
there is, if you look at sort of like Norwegian newspapers, Dagbladet, TV2, or the others, it's I think things are bigger than it typically is, and like in the German US way, it's just a lot of information at you, whereas in Norway it's sort of like bigger in sort of like which stories we highlight. And I see this as a clear differentiator. If it's good or bad, I don't know. But it's clearly also much that I think that a lot of young ones especially say that when they come to the homepage, there's so much information and articles for them to pick, so where do I start? Here, at least, things are bigger and it's clearly editorial driven. These are the stories that's maybe most important for you at the moment. But I don't think it's like a yes or it's bad or wrong in that case, but it's like a unique thing that for the listeners who are listening to this, if you turn on to the video, you'll see some examples. Helge, I want to bring the conversation into from you as a desker. You decide what the stories should go on the homepage, what the text should be, and so on. One of the guests I had on the podcast was Christoph Schmidt at Schibsted, which has built Curates, so the personalization engine. He has like this saying, which I sort of bring into very often, which is the bonfire. And the bonfire is basically stories that should be on top that is equal for everybody. So if you and me have lunch together, we most likely read the same stories. But then right now, VG has implemented personalization into the homepage. What are some of the benefits you think, and what are some of the things that sort of you think in terms of when you think about personalization as maybe echo chamber for the readers? What are some of the positives, negatives in this case?
Well, the positives are that we are capable of giving people more of the news stories they would like to read.
Yeah.
That is, of course, the end goal. Like, if we refer back to my previous statement about the mix, if we, through personalization, can give you the mix that you would like, that is, of course, a better user experience. But then again, we have the problem with, like, how do we fulfill our societal obligation? Like, we can't just give you, if you just want to read about football, sure, but we are a news publication, we should give you some news as well if there's something big happening in the world. So it's to finding the balance between this is maybe the most tricky part. Also, we have recently made a change in our publishing system, so I now no longer control all of the stories on the front. I only control the 20 top ones.
Yeah.
And this has, of course, again, benefits and downsides. I now have lost quite a bit of control, for example, because previously I could, if I would like to, I could adjust every single story on the front exactly how I would like it and give the same to everyone. And that, of course, gives you very much control. Like, I want these 5 articles about the war in the Middle East, and I want them to be on position 1, 5, 20, 44, and 66.
Yeah.
If I would like to do that. And I no longer have that possibility. Then again, we now are implementing new personalization strategies, and if we can make this work as well as we would like, it would make a better product for each individual user, which is of course the end goal.
I think the one part with the control is one of the guests, Tarmo Paju in Delphi, which I know you've spoken to, is talking a lot about being able to. One of the hard things is letting go of the control in this case because of the societal responsibility. But as you do you see like the personalization going higher and higher depending on the results, or is it like a clear rule that you define the 20? But what would be the things that you would need to see to let go of control for the personalization to move higher?
Currently, we have the hard cutoff on 20. I control the 20 first articles. And if we were to change that, I think we would need to see the algorithm we use have very good results, not only for clicks, obviously, and not only for giving people in certain demographic groups more of what they would like, but also we would need to see that it is able to prioritize the news stories that fulfill the societal obligation about the hard news, about the important news for everyone. And if we can make it do that to a very satisfying degree, then maybe we will go to maybe only 15, maybe only 10. But this is a work in progress, so who can say? But I think that currently 20 articles, to me, obviously feels very little now, because I'm used to having 80 to 100. So it's sort of hard to gauge, really. But right now it feels like very little already.
Yeah.
But we shall see.
I think you're doing it right. What we see with clients doing it is that you maybe start on a section page and then you move your way up depending on the goals that you want to see. But always the hardest part is sort of the letting go of control. So I think like having a say on what the algorithm should focus on. But I think you have to do it stepwise. I mean, starting on the top immediately, nobody's doing that. You need to have like a way for the editorial team to feel safe. Helge, I want to test you a little bit in terms of your ability as a desker and homepage, front page editor of like what story, because sometimes you could have that the headline in the article is also what goes on the homepage. But one thing I see very clearly in Norway and VG is that you would have like a different teaser title in the headline on the homepage versus what you have in the article. So I'm going to switch over now to the middle, and we are going to be looking at different articles. This one is one that we have for Mette-Marit. In Norway, this is translated to English, but it's actually on VG where you work. But you have the article here is that Mette-Marit is now on the list for new lungs, but today she actually got new lungs, yes. We understood. What sort of headline or text would you use here?
Well, I imagine this, I wasn't at work for this, but I imagine this started as a press release. that so you need to just react immediately. So I imagine that the first article published is basically just this title and lead text. So here I think the first title is just get it on the front page, and the title is just latest on the list for new lungs. Just go.
So this is all about being the quickest in that case, if you were to have it there.
Yes, this obviously happens for quite a lot of stories, that you just need to react immediately, and the first publication is just more often just a title, and then you need to get that on the front page. So in this occasion, I imagine to just smash it on the front page with maybe just the title Mette-Marit on list for new lungs, because there probably isn't a picture just yet. You just do that first, then you upload a photo of her, so you can short it down to on the list for new lungs, and then you can take a breather and sort of, okay, what do we have? Is there anything more yet? Because in the beginning, the news is the news. Just get it on there. And then, obviously, as the story unfolds, you will have more info from the press release. Maybe someone says something. I know that there is a quote in this article, which is basically as soon as possible, which is this underlines the drama of it. So that is a possibility. You can A/B test that if you like. But I would guess that, particularly for the first half an hour or maybe even hour, the news will win. We often see this in sort of big news stories, that just the news itself is so big that you don't need to color it with quotes or different descriptions. Just put it on there. The most sort of famous example, or the most sort of repeating example of this, is when a famous person dies. That is the news. Just, you don't need to...
Picture and the text, for example, dies in this case. Yeah.
Diego Maradona is dead.
Yeah.
That is the news. Yeah. That is the news story. You don't need to sort of do more. That is just what it is.
So this one is quite interesting. It's political, and it's about Trump in this case. So after this bitter split, European leaders play nice with Trump again. This is from the G meetings here, and going from like a very negative Trump to a more positive feeling towards him, maybe. I mean, what do you think about this article? What would go on homepage?
I mean, the most sort of natural start would be something like salute Trump. That is maybe the good starting point, and then you could sort of experiment with sort of highlighting the contrasts, I think. So sort of that picture and like the mood has changed, or big change, or something like that, to sort of indicate the contrast between previous meetings. You could also, if you'd like, this is sort of a big sort of sprawling picture of the entire room, but I imagine we have some tighter pictures of maybe Trump smiling, speaking with Macron, maybe. So if you could find that, and then find a picture from previous meeting where they are maybe a little more snappy, then you could sort of play on the contrast there. Yeah. So that could be a possibility for the front page.
You have such a good way of thinking about image, text, and then how they go together. And then the nice thing with A/B testing here is you can do variations here of them. So one of the things I've seen at the different events that I'm going to is very many trying to reach the young audience. And one clear thing that I've seen through the reports is that very many answer that they feel the homepage overwhelming. There's a lot of information there. They feel maybe it's too much negative. Of course, now we have different formats, tailoring more to the younger readers, podcast, video, and so on. But then, what do you think you as a homepage editor could do to make the homepage more welcoming for maybe younger readers feeling that it's overwhelming?
I think the most important thing there is to be aware of what kind of language you use, and to not use too many complicated terms that will be excluding to people when they visit the homepage. Because if you go to VG and the top story is something you simply do not understand, because it requires weeks or months of context to understand either what words I'm using or the news story itself, then people feel stupid, and people don't want to feel stupid when they read the news. So to be able to find a balance between what is the news story, but how can we also explain this to someone who has followed this story very well, or someone who has read it for the first time. That is, of course, a very hard balance to find.
Can I just, I now mention young people, but I keep on thinking about myself as a reader. Now I have a busy life, and I sometimes when I come to either VG or wherever it is, sometimes it feels almost like a duty. And I have this hypothesis that I think a lot of people agree with me, but then I feel like the homepage is created for people that are 7 or 8 times in a day, which is constantly updated. It feels almost like a duty. I mean, do you disagree, agree, or what's your thought on this?
Well, it's a very hard balance to find when you edit the front page, because, for example, on a day like this, the 2 top stories for basically the entire day is Mette-Marit gets new lungs and Norway beat Iraq.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 top stories. They simply are. And other things may happen during the day. We are recording at 1 o'clock, but probably, maybe, those 2 won't be at the top all day. And that is very good if you have read VG 7 or 8 times because you want more stuff. But if you read VG once today and it happens to be at, I don't know, 7:30 p.m., then those 2 might not be at the top. And for you, they should be. And that is a sort of a problem for the publishing, the 24-hour news cycle, and the amount of articles we write. And we, of course, absolutely love the people who read us so fervently, who goes to our webpage 10 times a day.
And they're maybe the ones paying a subscription even.
Yes, they literally pay my bills.
Yeah.
So I, of course, love these people. These are our super users. But if you end up editing the front page just for them, which can very quickly happen because, for example, if I let a story stay at the top of VG for 5 hours, then of course the clicks will decline because people who are there often will comment, but I already read this, give me something new. But again, I might think, but this is the most important thing that's happened today. Everyone needs to see this. And so I have to choose then between making a good front page for someone who hasn't been on VG that day or someone who has been there 7 times already. And that is a very tricky balance because, of course, you can be able to do both. Because if you, for example, if something happens at 10 o'clock and then you have a new story about it at 5 o'clock, 7 hours later, if you are able to present this in a way on the front page that both seems new to the readers already seen it and also understandable for the person who sees it the first time, then you are doing something right. But that is often tricky.
I will also throw in there that I think that analytic providers such as ourselves is partly guilty and one part of this, because you might look into the data in Kilkaya, which would be set for all of your readers. And maybe your super users are then driving up clicks on the one article. And if you look at all of the readers as a whole, you might be wrong. So you have like examples of clients like us, like Amedia and them in Sweden. They might drop 80% of their audience and just look at those that they have age demographic data on to say that this is the content the young ones are reading to better tailor towards them. But then I think we're moving away from having to just measure all readers and then maybe doing it per. But then that leads me to the question is, do you have like some gold standards in terms of KPIs that you look at to define what position a story should have?
We have 3 things we look for mostly, and it's clicks, quick exit, and demographics. Okay. So that is how we structure the front page. And the clicks are obviously how does the story perform. And quick exit is an indicator that people actually understand what we are doing. Because, as I said previously, often the tabloid form requires taking away information. But you need to be able to actually communicate what is the story about. And if the quick exit is too high, then you obviously haven't done that probably. And also demographics is something we're very aware of. And we're trying to find what stories perform well among women and the young, which is what every newspaper in Norway struggles with, I think.
It has always been the case.
Yes. I think this is probably varies among different publishers, but I think particularly the young is a problem for everyone. So And I think when you look for how does a story perform among the young, then I think you can walk into a trap if you are too focused on percentage among readers who are young. Because I think that if a story gets presented in a way that leads to, I don't know, 20,000 people reading it, and 35% of them are young, you might say, oh, that's great.
Pretty good.
35% young, wonderful. But if I would argue that it's a lot better if it gets read by 100,000 people and 20% of them are young, because that's a lot more young people.
Yeah.
So
these are where the triangle of those three metrics is actually connects very well. You have also clicks to the get in. Quick access tells you if you have a very clickbaity text that they might find, oh, this article not to work. But then I think you're hitting it on nail with sort of, I will almost call it demographic segmentation in this case. I think a lot of publisher has been very good in getting first-party data on sort of like age, gender, and so on. And that benefits you in terms of like understanding what stories, how to present them, basically.
Yeah, and I think that when you're, particularly in my job, like you should try to make the news accessible to young people, but I don't think it's a goal in itself that you should exclude other people. I think it's far better if you think about how can I make this accessible to everyone. Then so you don't try your best not to exclude, but if you can tweak something slightly to make it more accessible to younger readers, but still have it be something that most people find interesting, and I think you're doing a good job.
Yeah. Helge, given what we talked about today with A/B testing, the focus on the homepage that you do today, personalization in this, what does your job look like in, a crystal ball, like in 5 or 10 years? Is the homepage still relevant at that time? Have you given that some thought of like, what does a role of a homepage editor look like in the future?
I would certainly hope so, and I think it probably will, because our position is very, very strong. Like 95% of our traffic is from the front page directly. So I would be very surprised and very sad if the front page doesn't still have a very important role in 10 years. It certainly might not have as big a role as it does now. Maybe it would even be good if it doesn't, because it, again, 95%, that is quite hefty. So if we could have different ways of spreading our articles and our published stories that doesn't require us to surrender to Mark Zuckerberg's every will, that would be very good. A lot of other newspapers have struggled with this, that their social media traffic varies wildly from year to year, month to month, depending on how Silicon Valley tweaks their algorithm. So I think that is dangerous.
You have the combination of something that you control, which is your direct traffic, in this case, where you at least have control of what to show. But if you go with referral sources, Google Discover, social media, and so you don't know if that switches overnight and you have no traffic anymore. But then I think one of the things that is interesting with sort of Norway and the Nordics, I think Finland has the highest direct traffic in the world. Then Norway comes after, might be wrong on that. But then I think the Nordics did some really smart moves in terms of focusing on driving brand and direct traffic versus being dependent on traffic from referral sources. But now reaching the young audience, you need, or other segments, you need also these traffics to have multiple ways of giving a story, not just the homepage.
Yeah.
Helge, we have a closing tradition on the podcast where the previous guest gets to leave a question for the next, not knowing who it is. The previous guest I had on, I had one episode in between here, but the previous guest before that is a person I know that you met. That is Tom Paju, who's managing editor at Delphi.
Yes.
Almost like VG in the Baltics, I would say. And he has the question: what is the responsibility of media in covering the ongoing war in Europe and potentially now also other parts? And how do we use journalism to keep democracy alive right now? It's a very big question.
That is an enormous question. I can start with the war maybe, and then we'll see how we go. I think that particularly with the war in Ukraine, the most important thing now is not to forget it, because it has been going on for so long, and it seems sort of endless, and it's very tiring because it's so bleak that, and since it's been going on for so long, the interest in the public has sort of died down. The sort of fatigue with the enormity of the tragedy of it, and also the Iran war has now come and possibly went. We'll see how that signing goes with the peace deal. But so I think that is possibly the most important thing, is to still cover it as rigorously as we can. I think we have an enormous problem in our field of work that certain actors are capable of spreading their propaganda, lies, or tweaks of the truth just completely, incredibly quickly to their core audience in a way where we simply cannot keep up because fact-checking takes time. So by the time we have analyzed a certain claim or a video of showing something or not showing something, by the time we have actually been able to do the work, the narrative about this has already spread. And it's very, very hard to do this in a way where we can make our work on this spread as quickly and as thoroughly as they have.
I mean, this is the golden hope of the whole industry now, that the trust in terms of the fact-checking is going to be the one that makes the readers want to come to trusted sources versus what you say, but it's extremely difficult these days.
Certainly, because fact-checking takes time. If Donald Trump says something, which he says is true, then how do you can't fact-check in real time. It's very hard. You need to be extremely knowledgeable, and even then, you won't have time. And our sort of basic responsibility is, of course, to make sure that we do not take what everyone says as given fact. You need to don't say that someone explains something, or maybe perhaps even that they says something. They claim something, but that is very basic. If I say, as a front page editor, Donald Trump claims this and puts the quote on the front, then I still give him that space, or any other actor for that matter. And is that enough? Because I can say, I haven't done anything wrong. I only said that he claimed it. I have sort of done my due diligence to not sort of give that quote any more validity than it deserves. But I have spread it.
But like you sitting there and then you being sort of like when we did the examples here of like, for example, the story with Mette-Marit, and then you're sitting almost on the trigger. Okay, you go with the headline and then you do a breather. What goes there? I mean, sometimes you are in this, I guess, in between here that you really want to put out a headline, are going to work, but then you need to be holding back because you have the editorial judgment in terms of fact-checking and the other parts.
Yeah, certainly. Like many times, you sort of implicitly trust if this is a press release from the royal family saying Mette-Marit is on the list, then we take it for that she is. Yeah. That is just almost a societal contract, and it is certainly almost always correct. If the police give out a notification someone has died in this accident, then we publish that. Very, very rarely they are wrong. It has happened, but it's very, very rarely. So sometimes you can actually just go. But most of the time, the news are discussions. The news is dialogue. News is someone giving a speech. And then you need to be able to, as quickly as possible, put this in context. Why is he saying this? What is the background? And also, how does what he's saying, does it stand to reason? Does it not? Can we get someone to contradict him? Is there any other viewpoint that should be given space here? And this is hard to do in real time because these are very, very powerful people saying things in a public forum that we need to cover.
Yeah, I think it's coming back to the trust in that the brands of the newspaper is going to have with the fact checking. I mean, that's the hope. But then, Helge, the tradition is also you get to leave a question for the next guest, not knowing who that is or what they do. Do you have a burning question that you sit in with today in your work that you think maybe a next guest on this podcast could answer for you?
Yeah, I think what I am most interested in is knowing, and the person who can answer this correctly will be a millionaire. The most common form to consume news in Norway now is through browser or app on mobile phone, and everyone is looking for the next big thing. So, what do you think is the next big thing?
I'll make sure to bring that on to the next guest. Helge, thank you so much for joining and sharing all of your knowledge related to the homepage.
My pleasure.
And last question, who is winning the World Cup?
France.
Hopefully we'll get Norway, but let's see.